Hello and welcome to Tech Deals. I have an awesome computer to show you today. This is a $900 pre-built gaming PC from CyberPower. Not my first CyberPower I've ever reviewed. If you've watched my channel for a while, then you've seen others I've done, including this machine, which is last year's model. This year gets an upgrade. For only $50 more, you get quite a few new features, which we'll cover in just a minute. But before we get to that, if you want to play all current games at 1080p to 1440p resolution, at 60 to 100 frames per second, at high to ultra detail, you've come to the right place. This really will do that because it features the newly released GTX 1660 Ti with 6 gigabytes of GDDR6 VRAM. Much faster memory bandwidth than the previous model, which had GDDR5 in it, and double the VRAM because last year's model had 3 gigabytes. So now it's got 6 and it's got the Ti card in it. A few other upgrades. We have full RGB this time around. The previous model only had red LEDs. And we have the new refresh CPU from Intel, the i5-9400 instead of the 8400 in last year. It's basically the same CPU with a minor clock speed bump. Now it is a 6-core, 6-thread chip, and naturally many people say, is that enough? It depends upon what you're doing. If you're a serious content creator, multitasker, if you want to use the computer to live stream on Twitch, yeah, it wouldn't be my first choice. But if you just want to play games, then it's currently enough at the moment. And it certainly can be upgraded to future processors if you want. Now in this video, I'm going to take it out of the box and I'm going to show you the exact models. We're going to open up, take the side off, and we're going to take a look at the exact models of motherboard, graphics card, RAM, etc. that are in here. It does have a 120 gigabyte boot SSD, a 1 terabyte storage drive for games. It'll have room to add to it because it's in a very similar case to this. And then of course it's got room to upgrade in the future if you want to. That's one of the features I covered when I reviewed the previous model. Notice the relatively small size of the graphics card compared to the size of the case. You can, and I have put a GTX 1080 Ti in here, and a 2080 Ti would certainly fit if you wanted to. Might be an awful lot of graphics card for that CPU, but it certainly would fit. So if you want to upgrade the graphics card in the future, you certainly have plenty of room to do so. The power supply in this model is 500 watts. We'll have to see what this one is once we open it up. And they both come with 8 gigabytes of RAM, which if you look really closely, you'll see I've long since upgraded to 16 because all of my systems have 16 gigs of RAM. Thankfully, an 8 gigabyte module these days is about $40. So if you want to upgrade this to 16 gigs, it'll cost you $40 and 5 minutes of your time. Whenever I make a video on a pre-built gaming PC, I inevitably get a bunch of comments in the comment section down below saying one of two things. Either A, I could build a more powerful computer than that for the same money, or B, I could build that computer for less money. Yes, you can, generally, but that assumes that you don't value a few things. Number one, this computer can be built for $750 at the moment if you delete the keyboard, the mouse, the Wi-Fi adapter, and Windows 10. The rest of the parts are $750. Number two, building the thing. The computer comes pre-built and ready to run out of the box. Windows is already installed. Plug it in, turn it on, run Windows Update, update the drivers, and you are gaming. And number three, tech support. Is that of any value to you? To some of you it will be, and to some of you it won't. This right here is a $1,000 custom PC that I put together in November of 2018. I'll link to that down below. This is in most respects a more powerful computer for 10% more money than this, with a couple of caveats. Number one, this would be really hard to build for $1,000 today because I bought all these parts over a period of time at a great discount. This is a Ryzen 7 1700X CPU. I paid $149 for that CPU, which is not the normal price for it. It was a deal. This case was $29. The liquid cooler was $29. And again, neither of those are the normal price. So if you find building PCs to be fun and a hobby, if you pick up the parts over time whenever you find deals, sales, and discounts, and you're willing to spend time to put together your machine as cheaply and most efficiently as possible, and you enjoy the build process and you don't mind being your own tech support, by all means, custom build your own machine. You will get more performance for less money. However, if you build a new shiny computer such as this, and you plug it in and you turn it on and it doesn't boot, what are you going to do? Now, some of you are going to say, oh, cool, I have troubleshooting to do. That's fun. great, then you probably should be building your own machine. If on the other hand your answer is, oh crap, now what? Yeah, therein lies the dark horse of custom building PCs. Do you have spare parts to play swap the part? If I turn this on and something doesn't work, the first thing I'm going to do is start changing things out. Put a different video card in, put different RAM in, change the power supply, because I have a shelf full of parts that I can play swap the part with. Eventually, I'll find what the problem is and I'll get it working. If you're running a modern computer and it's blue screening, hard locking, or crashing, one of two things, frankly, is the problem. Either you have software problems, maybe you need a Windows clean install, maybe you have incompatible or out-of-date software installed, or two, you have a hardware problem. Something's wrong with your RAM, something's wrong with your motherboard, there's something physically wrong with your computer. Modern PCs don't crash. Modern PCs do not blue screen. These things are so reliable, it is crazy. I remember the bad old days of Windows 95 and 98. I even remember the early days of Windows XP back when blue screens were common. Those days are over. Frankly, since Windows 7, Windows has been very, very stable. So if you put together your new machine and for whatever reason you don't have a problem, now you got to figure out what the problem is, and you have individual return policies and individual components and warranties that you have to deal with, which is a big fat pain in the neck. Enter CyberPower. Two things here. Number one, if you buy this off of Amazon, take it out of the box, plug it in, and for whatever reason you have any problem with it in the first 30 to 45 days, don't even bother contacting CyberPower. Contact Amazon's customer service, initiate a return, send it back. They will send you a completely brand new machine. They'll pay for shipping both ways, no fuss, no muss. Do make sure you wipe any personal data off the machine before you send it to them, because of course you won't get that machine back and you don't know where it's going or who's going to touch it. So do wipe it, if at all possible. If you're beyond that return period, however, then you go to CyberPower. But the benefit is you can pick up the phone and say, hey, CyberPower, my computer is blue screening. Help me. They provide telephone support. They provide warranty support in one place. It's not like your motherboard company can blame the RAM or the video card, and the video card company can say, well, it must be your motherboard, and they want to pass the responsibility. Hey, CyberPower, I don't really care whose responsibility it is because it's your responsibility. That's one of the benefits of buying a pre-built system like this. You give up a little bit in terms of performance for the dollar. Yeah, you could build a little bit better for a little bit better price, but the convenience of being able to take it out of the box, plug it in, and be playing games in 30 minutes without any fuss, and if there's a problem, it's not your problem. That's worth something to some people, which is why I do these videos, because frankly, unless you have a shelf of spare parts, I think most people should buy pre-built computers. Most people try to build these, and without spare parts, and if you do it once every 3 to 5 years, you get lost or stuck at any point, and you haven't saved anything. So that's why we're covering this. One more thing before we take this computer out of the box, and I want to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the Xbox One, or PS4, depending on which you prefer. If you're looking for an easy gaming experience that is plug and play out of the box, and you say $900 is too much, this is almost the next best option. There really aren't any good pre-built gaming computers for less than this. If you get down to the $500–600 price range, they don't have graphics cards that are worth a darn. They don't have CPUs that are worth using. There's too many compromises. You can roll your own, but those have compromises themselves. I've done gaming PC budget builds from $300, $400, and $500, and they work, and they are full computers and they are upgradable, but they all come with some version of a compromise. Either the CPU is a dual core or an older model, or the graphics card is budget or it's integrated graphics. They're fine, but once you've used a really nice gaming computer like this, they're all sort of second rate. This, well, from the PC master race point of view, might be considered second rate, but I would like to say that it is very plug and play. You take your games, you put them in, you play them. They're either 1080p or some are 720p upscaled, but you won't notice the difference unless you have a really large TV. 4K Blu-ray, 4K content streaming, high dynamic range, $200, and it's plug and play. If you just want to play games and you think this is too much money, I actually think this is a reasonable choice. But obviously it's a console and a different thing. If you do have this kind of money, well, this is obviously a full computer and a better experience. And unlike the Xbox, can be upgraded for many, many years to come. That's enough talking. Let's take it out of the box. First step in taking any computer out of the box, open the top, turn it upside down, pull the box off. And with the computer out of the box and out of the foam, you can see we have a lot of plastic peeling to do. But before we get to the computer itself, it is the same basic case as last year's model. It's a Cooler Master MasterBox Lite 5 RGB case, which is a standard industry component. Inside this box, we get a free gaming mouse pad when you register, proudly assembled and supported in the USA with USA-based customer service. And they've got their 800 numbers there to contact support. And in the box, we have an RGB gaming mouse, and then we have Wi-Fi antenna, power cable. Let's see what else we have here. We have an RGB remote control. This controls the colors inside the computer. Reinstallation and driver CD. Zotac guide. I suspect this means we have a Zotac video card in here. And the Wi-Fi antennas. Something I really like that CyberPower does is that they put spray foam packing inside the computer to keep any components from moving around. Your video card's not going to get loose or knocked around. You will have to take the side panel off. It's simply a single large piece of foam that you'll take out. On the back of the computer, they have a very large sticker, because I'm sure they get a million support calls from this, saying don't put your monitors plugged in here. Plug them down on the bottom, because the motherboard does have video out, but if you plug a monitor there, you won't get anything. I'm sure people call up and say, why is my monitor not working? Because you didn't plug it in the right spot. Shall we peel some plastic? And the front. And the logo. With the side panel removed, you can see the foam, the spray foam inside. It's not tempered glass, it's plastic, but the benefit is it doesn't weigh too much. Simply take this and pull it out. Since filming what you just watched, I have spent several hours setting up this computer, and boy oh boy is it gorgeous with the RGB turned on. In this sequence here, I'm actually using the remote control I showed you a minute ago to change the sequence. As you watch the pattern, I'm pressing the advance button on the remote control to change the pattern. You can also set it to a static color, which I'll show you here in a second. But there's, I don't know, 15 or 18 different modes you can run them on. You can, of course, also turn them off completely. Notice that there are two RGB RAM sticks right in the middle of the computer. Yes, I've already put 16 gigabytes of RAM in here. Yes, it's RGB, because as I said before, I don't run without 16 gigs of RAM. One minor note, the bottom fan was turned 90 degrees. It simply was an installation error. I don't know if it was from Cooler Master or from CyberPower. You just pop off the front. Literally, you grab the top of it and pull. It pops straight off. There are two friction retention pins. They came right out without any tools. I turned the fan 90 degrees, put them in, and then they were in sync. Otherwise, it looked kind of funny because they weren't in sync. Other than that, it certainly is fine. What other thoughts do I have on this computer? It is a B360M XTreme board from ASRock, which is actually an OEM board. It's not on their website, but it's essentially the Pro 4 with some colors, with some red on it, rather than the gray and black of the Pro 4. It is a Zotac dual fan card. It's the base one. It's not a factory overclocked, but it certainly runs cool and quiet. Yes, that's an Intel stock heatsink there. No surprises whatsoever. Western Digital 120 green boot SSD. Western Digital 7200 RPM 1 terabyte drive. That's nice to see. There are two M.2 slots on the motherboard, but there are no screws included. I looked and looked and looked. Will CyberPower send you screws if you ask? I don't know. I would ask them if I were you. I have spare screws, so I was able to install an extra 1 terabyte M.2 SSD into one of those slots. No big deal. Recognized it right away. There you can see the RGB lights off if you're tired of all the pretty colors. And there they all turn back. My camera's set to autofocus, which is why it's coming in and out. It's very, very dark. But this gives you an idea of what it looks like in the dark. It really is quite pretty. It is now time for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's start with the good. That's why you're here. Cooler Master MasterBox Lite 5 RGB case. It's an industry standard case, easy to work in, modern design, USB and audio ports on the front. There's a 2.5-inch tray right here, easy to add another drive. It's got the toolless drive trays inside. It's a nice case. It's not an overly expensive one, but it's a nice case. I like the fact that it has an ASRock motherboard. It's not one of the commercially available models. It's very similar to the Pro 4. I had a look at the layout. It really is a Pro 4 that's rebranded. It does have internet BIOS updating, so I went into the BIOS. It's got all the options you'd expect. The Zotac video card is very nice. It's a dual fan silent model. It made no noise while I was messing around with it, running some benchmarks, playing with it. The system RAM that it comes with is ADATA XPG. You can't ask for more except for the fact that it's only 8. I do love that it has an SSD, but that leads us into the bad. The SSD that's included is a Western Digital 120 gigabyte green. First of all, it's time for these to be 240 gig drives because there's like a $10 price difference. Second of all, the greens are slower than the blues. When I was running updates, so long as I was only doing one thing at a time, it was really quick and responsive. As soon as I had several programs doing things at once, so long as I loaded up the drive, I noticed a lot of slowdown on this. If you are a multitasker, a green drive is probably not for you. But for most of the people who are going to buy a machine like this, it's probably fine. The reason it's sitting here is I've already replaced it with a 480 gigabyte ADATA SU700. And it's much quicker and more responsive. I just did a clean install on it because there's nothing on it. It was easy enough to do that. Toolless drive trays in the back. It literally took 3 minutes to replace this drive. Far longer to reinstall Windows, but changing out the drive would be easy. Same thing for the 3.5-inch Western Digital 7200 RPM 1 terabyte drive, which is really nice as well. I did also install a Crucial MX500 M.2 SSD in the bottom slot. I did have to provide my own screw. I searched and searched, and there were no screws that I could find anywhere in the packaging. And there's a second slot on the motherboard as well that you can install an M.2 drive in. No other expansion besides the 2.5-inch tray and then the onboard slots. One thing I don't like, I mentioned the ASRock motherboard. That's good. The bad part is, in the 3 previous CyberPower machines that I reviewed, each of them came with a retail available motherboard that you could get the BIOSes directly from the manufacturer's website, and the boxes came with the motherboard manuals. There was no manual to the motherboard in this box, so I think that's getting a little cheap on CyberPower's part. The Intel stock cooler is what it is. It's audible when the side is off and it's on top of the desk and you're listening for it. Put the cover on and especially put the computer under the desk or put it to the side and it's really not that bad. If you want to change it, you can. I suspect most people aren't going to bother. Power supplies. This comes with a 500 watt no-name power supply. It is absolutely fine for this graphics card. Don't replace it. You're just wasting your time, energy, and money. Frankly, would I put an RTX 2070 on this power supply? I would. It's not great, but it'll do the job. But that's probably the limit that I would put on it. But frankly, that's the limit of the graphics card that should probably go in here. In the next generation of cards coming out in the next few years, when the 30 series and 40 series launches, then the 60 or 70 series probably will be just fine on this power supply. But I would never plan on putting an 80 series, much less an 80 Ti, on something like this. But if that's what your goal is, then you're buying the wrong computer anyway, to be completely honest with you. And as far as the ugly goes, I mentioned this in the voiceover, I'm just going to call it out one more time. Seriously, not having the fans aligned for the RGB, it really wasn't very hard. Pull here, it comes straight off. There are 2 retention pins. It was 3 minutes to change the fan around, turn it 90 degrees, it was lined up. The one in the back actually is also still not lined up. Same thing on that, it would be really quick to turn it around, but its spinning action is not quite lined up with the front one, so you just have to rotate it. That's not something a consumer should have to do. It's not a huge deal, but come on, CyberPower, get it right. Ultimately, whether this is worth it to you or not depends entirely upon whether or not you want to build your own computer. As I said before, you can certainly do better for either less money or more performance for the same money rolling it yourself, but then you have the issues that I mentioned before. I will put links down in the video description, not just to this and not just to the other videos I showed you earlier, but I will also put together a similarly priced custom build currently available when I'm recording this in March of 2019 with better components that I would build a machine in today. If you've got $900 to spend and you'd like a better computer than this, take a look at the links down below and take a look at what I've put together. Like this video if you like it, share it with your friends if you've loved it. Remember to subscribe to my channel with the big huge red button directly below. Questions, comments, thoughts, feedback, suggestions, that's what the comment section is for. I don't respond to everybody, but I promise you I do read them all. Hit the bell notification icon next to the subscribe button if you'd like to actually be notified when new videos are coming out. I will have benchmarks coming up soon on this. I'm going to do a whole slew of benchmarks and compare them to the Ryzen 5 2600 that I recently built as well. I'll have to retest with this graphics card and swap that around, but I will do that so you can see what this i5-9400F is compared to that. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you next time.